In the previous tutorial videos, we already developed two model classes, course record and students. And what we have achieved, we could create complicated object structure like this. So at the top level, we have a student object over here, and the student object has an attribute courses with array type. And then it's going to point to an array, and the array itself has some limits about the maximum number of courses each student can register for, in which case 5. And then for each slot of the array, it can go further by storing the address of some course record objects. So in that case, we got one object over here, and we got one course record object over here, and we got a third one over here. And the most important thing we learned about patternizing such structure is we learned about every time you have an array of reference type, you should also have a counter over here. So I just called it NOC, standing for number of courses. Again, so this counter over here has two purposes, which you really have to understand by heart. So the number one purpose is it tells you exactly how many courses that has been registered so far. Okay, and of course this number must be less than or equal to the length of the array. Of course, the maximum number that the NOC can get into would be 5 in this case, because the s.courses.length will just be 5 in this case. The number two purpose is, so this NOC counter also indicates if you want to add a new course for this particular students. So this tells you this is the index to store that particular new course. In the very beginning, NOC, because there's no courses registered so far for the students, NOC value will just be 0, and then we'll simply store the first course into position 0, and then to 1, and then to 2, and then what about we have already stored 5 courses, in which case NOC value will be just 5, which means the array is fully occupied, and 5 is actually not a valid index for the next course to be stored. Okay, so you really should understand how these two purposes actually serve for the NOC counter value. Okay, that's what we have learned from the previous videos, and we spent a lot of time explaining all the technical details about how to make this pattern work. It's really important that before you learn about how to create a third model class, you really understand how to create the previous two. Okay. So now, starting from this tutorial, we'll show you how you can add an extra layer of model class. So now, in some way, the class we're going to create is very similar to how we develop the student class. So the class we're going to create will be a student management system class, which has also an array attributes. Let's call it students. And students, guess what? It's going to be an array of student objects. So eventually, what we'll get into is we're going to have 3 layers of objects. At the first layer at the top, we got student management system, which contains an array of student objects at the second level. At the second level, we got a number of student objects, and each student object has an array of course record objects at the third level, at the bottom level. So you can see we got 3 layers of object structure. I'll draw some diagram once I get to the tester part at the end of this video. But let's now just develop the student management system very quickly, because as I said before, the way we develop this course will be just almost identical to how we did for the students. So all the technical details have been explained. You can just refer to the previous video. Okay. There will be some details I'll just briefly review and remind you about. If you're not sure, you should really check out the previous video. Okay, so now let's go back to our same package over here. Let's create a new class. Right click and create a new class called Student Management System. Student Management System. Okay, and then let's say OK over here. Okay. Okay, you can say a student management system stores a collection. So every time when you see a collection, a list, or a number of, that means you should really use the data structure called array, okay, which will store a sequence of things. A collection of student. Okay, let's just say that. So when I say student, that means they store the addresses of student objects. Okay, just like how each student store addresses of course record addresses. Okay, so what we'll do is, for student management system, let's make it easy. We have only one single variable as the attributes. So we can say students over here, and then students. Let me draw some connection for you. It's analogous to the following attributes in the student class. I'll draw the connection for you. You can see that in the case of the student class that we developed before, we also got an attribute called courses. And courses is an array of course record. Okay, so now for student management system, symmetrically, we also say a student management system has students, which is an attribute name, and also it's an array of students. Okay, it's very similar. And now, as I said before, to support this pattern of array attributes, you should also have an integer value over here. Integer, for example, I can call it NOS, number of students. And it's really crucial that you understand there are two purposes for this counter. Okay, number one indicates number of students added to the student management system so far. Okay, that's number one. And number two indicates where to store a new student object's address in the students array. So initially, NOS will just be 0, which means for the very first student to be added, we'll add it to position number 0, and then position 1, and then position 2, etc. You will normally, and also as we learned, you will normally use this counter value as the upper bound of loop counters. Okay, this point is, I will illustrate this again. I will mention this again very briefly, but this is also explained in the previous video. Okay, so usually for the upper bound for any for loop that will iterate through the array of students, you will actually use I, for example, integer I is a loop counter I strictly less than this dot NOS, as opposed to I less than this dot students dot length. Okay, the latter is actually not correct because the entire array may not be fully occupied, meaning that you may have null slots and you may have null pointer exception if you use the this dot students dot length as the upper bound. Okay, we also explained this in the previous video for the case of the student class. Okay, so we got these two values here to work together to support the pattern. And also, usually we will also have some upper bound for how large the array should be initially. So we have some assumption over here to say for each student management system, there's got to be some maximum number of students that you can register into the system. So for simplicity, why don't we just say, so you can usually make a constant because typically this requirement doesn't change. Integer maximum number of students. Remember, the constant will be all capitals separated by underscores. It's assigned to, it doesn't have to be, realistically, maybe it has to be 1,000 or 500. But for simplicity, for this tutorial, let me just make it, what about just 6? Okay, maximum 6 students in this mini student management system. Okay, and then we'll see that based on this maximum value over here, which is very similar to how we did for the student. Remember we said before, each student actually got maximum 5 courses to be registered. And there's something we didn't do in the previous tutorial video, which I will try to illustrate briefly for the student class. But I can apply the same pattern in the student management system, in the student class. Remember in the student class over here, let me show you. What we did before, we say add course record. We say that if the title does not exist, if the title of the new course already exists, which will create a clash, in which case we signal some error. Okay, but there's another error which we can signal in the same method as well. What if, let's say, currently we already got the maximum number of courses already in the student for the student objects, which means the student already registered for 5 courses already. In that case, we should also signal an error to say the quota is full, so the student cannot register any courses further. Similarly, in the student management system, if we define this constant to be 6, that means in the constructor of this class, we're going to create an array for the students of size 6 exactly. And now that means we can add students into this SMS as long as it does not exceed this maximum quota, which is 6. As soon as we reach 6 and we are trying to add a 7th student, in that case we'll signal an error as well. Okay, that's something I will briefly show you possibly in the next video, okay, in a later video. Okay, so now we got the maximum over here. So now we're gonna define the constructor for the student management system. Okay, so gotta be the same name as the class. Okay, student management system. Let's say we don't have any name or any ID for this student management system. Let's make it simple, just the attributes. Okay, so what we should do is we should really initialize the array, otherwise it will just be null. Okay, and what we'll do is we'll say students is assigned to new students. So that's the syntax of the array that you should know very well. Okay, and then we should give a size over here. And so rather than saying 6, which is we call the magic number, you should really try to minimize the dimension of integer literals in your class. Whenever you have some name constant, use the name constant instead. Okay, we do that, and also we'll say NOS explicitly is assigned to 0. Initially, no courses has been registered, and then if you want to register for the first one, no student has been registered, and if you want to register the first student, start from index 0. Okay, the two purposes. Some of you might be wondering if you can write something like this over here instead. Okay, this one here. Okay, let me just put it here. Let me say declare the constant first. Some of you might be wondering if it is okay to actually write this. I wouldn't say it's wrong, because you can also initialize the attribute values right away in the same line. But I would say it might be a good practice, and also it can also has a greater extent of readability of your code if you try to do all the initialization of attributes in the constructor only. So there's a single place. You can see right now, if I simply do this, right? In that case, let me just get rid of that. If I only have this, you can see I have some initialization over here as we declare the attributes one place. And the other place is we also initialize some other attributes in the constructor. So we got multiple places to worry about. So I would suggest you really try to initialize all the attributes only in the constructor. It's a better style, I would say. I prefer that style personally. Okay, so what I would do is I will simply get rid of that line, and then I will say students is assigned to this. Okay, so now after this, I will try to support the mutated methods to add the students, and we also learn about the counterparts in the student class. You can see we got 2 versions of add student record. One which will take an object directly, which means whoever is using this method must create the objects themselves and then pass the objects to this method. And the second flavor, and the second version is we provide only the information for the method itself to create the objects internally. Okay, so we got 2 versions. Let's show the 2 versions again. So again, this kind of pattern is very standard, so you should really just learn very well, and then hopefully you just can apply for any similar classes. Okay, so we can say the first one will be add void. It's a mutated method. Void add students. Okay, let me just make it a little bit upwards so you can see it more clearly. Okay, so we can say add students over here, and then a student objects. Let's say S. Okay, so basically we're gonna say this dot students add position NOS. Okay, is assigned to S, and we explained how this worked exactly in the previous video. You should really review them, and the explanation will be exactly the same for how it worked in the student management class. Okay, and then NOS plus plus. Okay, let me just say over here to do. Okay, there will be some error handling over here, which we'll do just a little bit later. So to do error handling for two cases. One, S already exists. And also number two, maximum capacity already reached. Okay, I'll talk about how to do this using our error and error message attributes as we learned from the previous student class a little bit later. Okay, as students over here, and then let's now do the another one. Okay, so what will be the necessary information for us to create the students? Let's go to the student class. Okay, so you can see that for students, the constructor itself for the students only takes a name. So that means the name of the student will be the only thing that's necessary. And once when we first create a student objects, as we learned before, we're only going to initialize an array of size corresponding to the maximum number of courses, in which case 5, right? That's what we learned before. So now what we can do is we can simply say void add students. Instead of passing an object of type students, we'll simply pass the information that's necessary for us to create a students. So we can say string name. Okay, and then what we can do is we can say students, let's say S is assigned to new students, and then use the same name as the input parameter over here. Okay, and then we can simply call this particular version as a helper method. So you can say this dot add students, and then we can pass S directly. Okay, that's done. Okay. Okay, after this, okay, so now we are pretty much done with the minimum amount of support for this pattern over here. Let's do a tester, and then I will show you some visualization, which is also important, because now you can see that we now have 3 classes in our model components. We have course record, we have students, and we have student management system. So now the thing is, how do they work together? Okay, so that's why I want to show you a tester and then to show you visualization and maybe a little bit debugger as well. Okay, that's really important. So the technical details about how the add students and also how the creation of new array of null slots and how the NOS, the counter works, we have covered this technical details in the previous video for the counterpart in the student class. Review them if you do not fully understand. Okay, okay, let's try the tester. Okay, right click on the package here and say new Java class. So I would say SMS Student Management System tester. Okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, let's now. So now let me say this time our tester is going to be just before I say anything. So let's copy this out. Public static void main string args. Okay. So now this time, the way I'm going to develop the tester, we're going to have some visualization in mind. So you can see sometimes we will actually develop the test code first, and then from the test code we draw diagrams to visualize what's happening. But now this time we do it the other way around, whichever way that's more convenient for you, whichever way that's applicable. Now this way we do the other way around, i.e. we draw the diagram first to see what we really want, and then we translate the diagram into Java code. That's what we will do. Okay, I already got some diagram over here to start with. So over here, let's try to do one by one. Okay, we'll go bottom up. Okay, so which means we go from course record and then to students and then to student management system. Okay, let's try to do just one by one. So it's going to be a review, also strengthening of your understanding. Okay, basically what we will do is we're going to create 4 course record objects, CR1. You can see CR1, CR2, CR3, and CR4 and CR5. 5 course record objects. And then we're going to have 2 student objects, S1 and S2. Okay, and then you can see how we connect them together. You can see S1.courses is referring to this array over here. the first position is going to store the address of CR1. Okay, the first position over here is going to store CR1, and the second position is going to store the address of CR2, and etc. And similar way on how we can connect S2 with CR4 and CR5. Okay, let's see exactly how we can do this. We'll do one by one very carefully. Okay, so now let me use the color, let's say green over here. So whenever I color an object in the diagram over here, that means we are going to cover that right away in the test code. What about the first one? Let's say we want to do an object CR1 pointing to this particular course record objects over here. Let's do this one first with EECS 1022 and marks 72. Okay, let's do that first. Okay, so now let's go to our test code. So what we'll do is we'll say course record CR1 is assigned to new course record, and then we're gonna have the name first, EECS 1022, and then the marks would be, let's just give 72. Okay, so I'm using the third version of the constructor over there. Remember, in that course record objects class, we got 3 versions of the constructor. The constructor in parameter list can either be empty, or it can initialize only the name, or it can initialize both. Okay, let's say I use the third version, which we didn't use before. Okay, you can use whichever version you like, whenever that's applicable. Okay, that's for CR1. Okay, done. Okay, so now let's say for this the next one, we want to do for CR2, which is going to point to this particular course record objects for 2030 and then 65. Okay, the second one. Let's do that. Okay, similarly, we're going to do course record CR2 is assigned to new course record, and then EECS 2030 and then 65. Okay, that's a second one. Okay, what about the third one? Okay, the third one is going to be CR3 over here, which is going to point to this particular course record objects for 3311 and 81. Okay, let's do that. So course record CR3 is assigned to new course record, and then we have EECS 3311, and then we have 81. Okay, let's create all the course record object first, and then we'll create the next level for students, and then we'll see how we can do connection. Okay, so now, okay, the next one will be CR4. Okay, CR4 is pointing to an object of course record, and then it's going to be EECS also 1022, but it's actually a course record for different students, so that'll be 77. Let's say different marks. Okay, the same course but different marks. Course record CR4 is assigned to new course record, and then we'll put EECS 1022, the same title, and then we got 77. Okay, different marks. Okay, finally, we have CR5 over here pointing to a course record object over here for 2030 again, but for different students, and 61. So now we'll say course record CR5 new course record EECS 2030, and then we'll get is 61. Okay, so now if you like, I can add some comments for you to be added to student S1, and this one to be added to also S1, to be added to S1, to be added to S2, okay, and to be added to S2. Okay, so these are the 5 course objects in green that we just have. Okay, and now let me do the second level, the student class. Okay, let's say I first want to do the following. Okay, let me use a different color here. What about I use blue? Okay, now I want to do S1 is pointing to an object over here of student type, and then has gym, and also the courses is gonna be an array of size 5 initially. Of course, initially NOC will just be 0. Okay, but we'll double check with that in the debugger. Okay, NOC. The reason that you see 3 for NOC value here is because eventually it will become 3 after we add 3 courses. But now let's visualize that first for gym and then 5 courses, right? So now what we'll do is students, okay, S1 is assigned to new student objects and then gym. And that's it. Remember, the constructor for the student class will only take the name. And internally for the constructor, as you can review over here, is actually going to create this courses is assigned to new courses. And what's the maximum number of courses? It's basically going to be 5. Okay, that's what you will do. But we'll double check with this with debugger. Okay, and now what we'll do is we'll say, what about student 2? Okay, we got another student. You can see so far there is no connection just yet between the blue students and the green course records. The arrow is not there yet. Not there yet. Okay, and then the next one we're gonna do S2 over here, which is pointing to a student object over here. The name is Tom, and also the courses is also pointing to an array of size 5, the same. Okay, and the NOC initially, of course, should be 0. Okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, let's go on and say students S2 is assigned to a new student, and then let's say Tom. Okay, so now, so far we have created the objects at the the bottom and the middle level. We haven't got into the student management system yet, but we'll get there in just a moment. Okay, so now so far that's what we have got. I want to run the debugger right away to show you that there's no connection just yet. Of course, what you can do is you can do the following. You can say sout over here, s1 dot toString, and system dot out dot print line, and then s2 dot toString. Okay. So now let me just make some comments over here. Sout over here. After creating the 2 student objects without adding any courses yet. Okay, let's run the tester first and then we'll see the debugger. Okay, we want to see both. So now right click on SMS tester and then run the tester. Okay, let's now wait for the Gradle to build, and then we'll see what happened. Again, you should really appreciate test-driven development. So we are trying to test different classes as we develop. Okay, you can see that. You can see after creating the courses, you can see NOC for both students S1 and S2 will just be 0, and also the array will just be null slots throughout. Okay, consistent with how we set. It will work for the student class, okay, in the previous video. Okay, let's also see this from the debugger very quickly. What we'll do is let's put a breakpoint right here, okay, and then we'll run the debugger over here, and then once we so basically you can see this is already after we have created the 2 student objects. So right at this point. Okay, so what I would see is, you can see we got CR1, CR2, CR3, CR4, CR5. So these are the 5 course objects. Okay, and then we also got S1, and also we got S2. Okay, let's have a quick look. S1, we got name, and also for the courses array, if you expand it, it will simply tell you that all the elements are null. Okay, basically null. Okay, and also for this S2 students, also if you expand courses, all the elements are null as well. Okay, and then we also got error and error message before. Remember from before, initially there's no error, so it's false. Error message will just be empty string. Okay, so you should really try to understand how the debugger works. It's really valuable technique for you to pick up for this course. Okay, now after this, what we'll do is let's stop the debugger and then we'll go further. You can see now we haven't got any connection from, especially you can see the courses array for the 2 student objects have no arrows pointing to any of the course records. We haven't done anything like that. Okay, so now let me close this and then close the debugger. Okay, so now what I want to do is now we want to make connection. Okay, so now I will just say S out. Okay, so now after adding courses to students, okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, let's see exactly what we want to do over here. So now we want to draw a connection, so I'm going to use another color. So now specifically, let me just explain one of the just in a slight more details, and the others will just be done similarly. So now I would like to do, first of all, I would like to add this arrow over here. That's what I would like to do. How do I do that? So basically, for this one here, I'm trying to add CR1 as the first course for S1. I'm trying to add it into S1. So we do support a method for that. Okay, let's see exactly how that's going to work. But now, just before we do that, let me just write down one line for you. Basically, if you want to support, want to implement this yellow highlighted arrow over here, basically what you want to do is, you can see currently, basically you want to say S1 dot courses over here at position 0, right? So initially it simply stores null address. Now you want to say, rather than storing null, now assign some value to me, and then I'll assign exactly what CR1 is storing, right? CR1 is storing the address of this object over here. And then, so basically I'm trying to copy CR1's value into this slot over here. Okay, that's exactly what we will do. And of course, in general, we don't really put any specific value for 0 or 1 or 2 over here, or CR1 or CR2 over here. For this part, we'll simply put NOC, number of courses, NOC, right? And also for here, we'll simply put something like a C, the input parameter for the method. Okay, that's what we'll do. Okay, it's only a review for what we did. And we'll also verify that in the debugger quickly. Okay, so now what we'll do is now say S1 dot add course record, and then we have to put, so now let me just do it again. Okay, I should select the right version. S1 dot add course record. Let's choose the second this version over here, which will expect a course record objects. Now what should we pass? We should pass CR1. Okay, now let's see exactly how this one is going to work very carefully. Okay, so now if you run the debugger over here, let's see. Okay, so now we stop at this point right before we try to execute this line, and now I want you to see two addresses for me. Okay, now first of all, S1 is 496. So S1 is 496. So it's 496. So that means the address for this object over here is 496 in the memory. Okay. And also, I want you to look at the address for CR1. So S1 is a context object. What about CR1? CR1 is 491. Okay, CR1 is 491. That means this object in the memory is 491. Okay, so now what we're going to do is we're going to copy this 491 into the slot over here. Okay, because NOC at the moment is only 0. No courses has just been added yet, but we want to add the first one. Okay, so now let's now step into it. Okay, if you say step into, what you will see is add course record, right? So now, of course, we'll remember the error handling we said before. If the course record already got an existing title, that means we'll report error. Otherwise, we'll do whatever we're gonna do. In this case, it's okay. Okay, so now exactly this line here, I want you to draw attention to it again. You can see that this courses. So this, what's this? You can say the current object. So now we are in the context of student class. It's that this object has address 496, which is exactly this object we're talking about. Okay, this one over here. And then we also got this courses at position NOC. What's NOC? NOC currently is just 0. And that means, so this, which is S1 courses, which refer to this array over here at position 0, which is exactly this slot over here. We want to store some value, which is CR. What's CR? If you move your mouse over, CR is 491. Or you can see from the debugger over here. CR is 491. And what's 491? It's exactly this course record object here. So we're going to copy this address to here. Okay. At the moment, this courses has all the slots being now. But as soon as we execute this line, what's going to happen? Starting from position, okay, so that means position 0 will store exactly this address over here, and position 1, position 2, position 3, position 4, they will still be storing now. Okay, let's see if that's really the case. Now, if we step over, you can see that now for courses, you can see at position 0, that's exactly this arrow, red or yellow arrow we just implemented, we just executed. So you can see for now position 0 is storing the address for 491. Okay, 491 over here, right? So that means now we got, you can think about conceptually 491 over here. Okay, it's storing that. So visually speaking, it's pointing to this particular course record objects. And then we also got to increment NOC. Okay, by 1. So after the very first course, NOC becomes 1. So that means we have added one course, and also the next course to be added should really go to position 1. Okay, so that's really a quick review of how we what we said about this pattern over here, how it works at the runtime. Okay, so now let me stop this, and then I want to go back to our tester over here and then complete the rest. Okay, so now what about, okay, we have just done the very first one in detail. The rest will be very similar. Okay, so now what about second one? How do I add a second course over here for student 1, or CR2? Okay, so what I will do is I would say s1.add course record and then CR2, and also s1.add course record CR3. Okay, and also we have s2.add course record. Actually, let me not go so fast. Okay, otherwise you will go out of sync of the diagram. Let me do it again. So this line over here is simply doing this CR2 adding. Okay, what about this? How do I add a third course for S1? So this will be s1.add course record CR3. Okay, so now we have added 3 courses for S1. So that means after executing this line, after this, NOC for S1, S1.NOC will be exactly 3. But we'll see that in just a moment. Okay, so now how about S2? Okay, the first course we would like to add is over here. Okay, so now for CR4, okay, we want to add CR4 to S2. So now you can see the context object is different. Rather than S1, it's now S2. Add course record as CR4. Okay, finally, we want to draw this, implement this yellow arrow over here. How do we do that? Okay, so now we can go back there and say S2.add course record over here, CR5. Okay. So now we have added all the 5 courses to the 2 different student objects. That's what we have. And now let's print out the 2 student objects to see if they're really added. Okay, so now s1.toString and s2.toString. Okay, that's what we got. Okay, for simplicity, let me also cut these 2 lines and put it here. Okay, what about that? You know what? I'm just thinking about what might be the best way to illustrate this. Okay, let's put it here. Doesn't really matter. And then I'll put them over here. Okay, so you actually got clear separation. Okay, so now after adding the 5 courses to the 2 student objects, now that's what we have. Okay, so now what we can do now is let's now execute the tester again. Let's see what happened. So now you can see initially no for all the for both students, and then after adding the courses to students, you can see that's what we have, right? So NOC value for S1 will be 3, NOC value for S2 will be 2, and then we got 3 courses over here. So 1, 2, and 3 courses, and also we got 2 null slots. Similarly, for S2, we got 3 null slots, and we got 2 courses object in the first 2 slots of the array. Okay, hopefully that's not really too strange to you because we covered this already in the previous video, but it's really important to review them before we build an extra layer of complication. Okay, so now what we want to do now is we want to create a student management system objects, and then we want to add S1, S2, the two students into the management system. That's what we want to do. So how do we do that? It's going to be very similar. It's pretty much like the way you add students into student management system. It's just like how you add course records into a student objects. Very similar, just the same. Because they follow the same pattern. Okay. So now, let me just let's see how we can do that. Let's go back to the diagram over here. So now I'm gonna draw some extension over here and see how we can do that. So now, what I want to do, first of all, I want to create an object and store its address called SMS. Okay, and then I want SMS to point to a student management system objects, which has only one attribute, so it doesn't have to be too big. Let's say you put it here. Okay, it's going to be student management system. Okay, just for short. And then for student management system, we have basically two attributes. Okay, so we have students, and then we have number of students, right? That's what we have. Remember, we actually got two attributes over here. We got NOS, also we got students. Okay, that's what we have. And then what we want to do is we want to create these objects. Initially, it's going to point to an array of size. Okay, let's be careful. Okay, so now you can see that it's going to create students of size, maximum number of students, which is 6. Okay, it's going to be an array of size 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Initially, they should all point to null. And then NOS should just be 0. No student have been added yet, and the first student is going to be added in index 0. Okay, how do we achieve this particular step? And the way we do that is by, let's go to the student tester over here. Let's go there. Okay, so we are not really adding any we're not really building connection just yet. Okay, so now what we'll do is student management system SMS is new student management system, takes no parameter, and that's it. Okay, so now what we will do is we'll now try to execute this line and see what happened. Okay, of course, what you can do is you can also try to go to let's try to do this as well. We can define a toString method similarly to how we did for the toString method for the student class. Okay, so why don't I just go to the toString method over here. Let's do some copy and paste and fix it, then I can save some time. Okay, let's go back to student management system. Let's not worry about the error handling just yet. Okay, let's not worry about it. So now let me just get rid of that. Okay, so now let's fix the indentation over here. Okay, it's going to be very similar to what we did before, but I'm just going to fix the attribute name as well. Okay, just give me one moment. There should be a shortcut for fixing the indentation for Android Studio. I just don't want to spend time looking for that, but I can certainly Google to see how you can fix the indentation automatically rather than doing this manually. Okay, so now what I would do is I would say rather than NOC, it's going to be NOS, and then rather than courses, I would say students. And then over here, NOS. Okay, and then we're going to print out everything. Okay, So this is the rare occasion where you will use this.students.length as the upper bound for the loop counter. But I would say typically, if you want to go through all the students registered so far, you should really put the upper bound as this.nos, typically. Okay. So now we'll say students. And you can see that over here, when we say this.students at position I.toString, this will in turn call the toString method that we defined before, right? So this we just call so it's really good to define the toString method for every model class, so you can just reuse them as a helper method. So now what I can do over here, okay. So now let's not worry about the pretty printing for this toString method, but you can definitely do the pretty printing by yourself. Okay. Okay, let's do that, and then let's say after this, let's just go to launch. Let's go to Student Management System tester, and then let's launch. Oh, actually, I should really put it. Okay, so now what I should do is I forgot. It's out, and then SMS dot toString. Okay, and now I'm just gonna copy this particular comments over here, and that's what I will do. So this will initialize a student management after creating a student management system objects without adding any students yet. Okay, and then let's try again. Let's execute a toString method and see what will be printed out in the console. Okay, you can see that after creating a SMS objects, NOS is 0, and also students will be null, 6 nulls, exactly like this. Okay, so now let's see how we can do the following connection. Okay, so now let's see, and the connection, the way we implement the connection is exactly the same as how we did for connecting a students into a course record. Okay, so now let's say the first one. Let me use maybe pink. Okay, so now how do I say for, let's say somehow I want to say SMS dot students, which refers to this particular array, right? And then let's say at position 0, which is talking about this slot over here. Okay, I want to say it's now referring to S1. Okay, how do I do that connection, right? Basically, you can see that the address is 496. Somehow we just gotta effectively we're gonna put 496 into this slot over here to be 496. But we don't have to do that by ourselves manually. You don't put 496 in your Java program. It's just conceptually that's how the runtime will implement that. So now, how do we somehow connect this one over here? How do we do that? And this one over here is simply just, you know what, it's actually better if I try to do that implementation over here. So that what that would do is, it would say SMS dot students at position 0 is going to copy the address of whatever that's stored in S1. Okay, that's what we want to do. But we don't have to do this explicitly because we already support this in a addStudent method, right? That's what we'll do. So that line there is exactly what's being implemented in the addStudents method over here. You can see the first line is exactly doing that, depending on the current value of NOS. So that's what we can do. Go to SMS tester over here, and then what we'll do is we'll say SMS dot addStudents. And let's choose that version there, which will take a student objects, and we'll put S1. Okay, so now, before I show you the debugger, let's see what's going to happen over here. S out, and then we can say SMS dot toString. So now, what you can do is, let's say S out over here. After adding students to SMS. Okay, after that. Okay, let's see what's going to happen. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll go for run the tester and see how the SMS to string value will change. What you will see that is you can see before we add a student to SMS, we got NOS being 0, all the slots in the array being null. So now after adding the student into the SMS, NOS becomes 1. And now what do we have as students? For students, you know what, I can try to, I will try to improve the layout a little bit. I'll do that in just a moment. But let's try to understand this. So the students array looks like this. It's going to be a student with 3 courses, exactly this student over here. It's going to be a student over here. So the first student for the SMS is such a student whose number of courses is actually 3, right? So that's why it says it's 3. And then you got courses and you got etc., right? Okay, that's what you have over here. Okay. Number of courses is 3. I'll try to improve the indentation for you so it's easier for you to see. Okay. So what I would do is, let me just do it this way. Of course, you can try to print your toString value as well by yourself. Let me just do it quickly. What I would do is I'll put a tab, okay, in the student class. In the student class, go to the toString method and then put a tab over here and put a tab over here. Okay. And then I will go to the student management system over here, and then I'll go here. Okay. So we got students. Okay. What I will do is I'll put a new line over here. Okay. New line. And then for each student, I'm going to actually, let's see how this will work. Before each student, I'll put 2 tabs. Okay. I'll also put a tab over here. And then after the comma, after each student, I'm also going to put a new line. Okay. Okay, let's see if this might work. Let's see exactly if this might work. Okay, so let me now execute. Of course, you gotta just play with how you do the pretty printing. Okay, we're getting somewhere. Okay. Okay, we got students over here. We got NOC. And then for the courses, I think, okay. Yeah, I think it will take a little bit of time to actually pretty print this, but hopefully you can see what I'm trying to do here. I have students over here, and then NOC. Okay, let me just, okay, we got students over here. And for each student, we're going to, okay, for now, I can also put a tab. Let's see if that will help much. Okay, it's getting a little bit better. Okay, so we got courses and we got NOC. I wonder, what if I don't have this line over here? What's going to happen? Okay, I think this might be good enough. This might be good enough. Okay, I think that's good enough. Okay, so that's about it. So now let's read it again. So now after creating an SMS, what we have is NOS is 0, and all the students are simply just null. Okay, null, 6 nulls. And after adding the first students, so we got NOS being 1, and then so now you can see that these 2 lines are the toString value from the first student that we just added. And that particular student has the number of courses being 3, and their courses are, they got 1022, they got 2030, and also they got 3311. So that's what we got, right? And also you can see the array is of size 5 rather than 6. And the rest of the slots are simply just null. Okay, hopefully you can see that. I think the pretty print is good enough, but I can try to make it better if you want. Okay, I'm just trying to do that on the fly, so it's not really the best pretty printing I can come up with. Okay, so now let's go back to our diagram over here. So that's exactly what we have done. So now how can we add the second students? Okay. Okay, of course, from the previous one, the first position is no longer pointing to null. Okay. So now what about the second one? So now how do let me just get another color over here. What about this one here? Okay. So now let's say SMS dot students at position 1. That's the second one. So I want to actually to say, rather than storing now, rather than doing that, I wanted to store the address of the object that's pointed to by S2 over here. So now basically, I want to copy the address that's stored in S2 into this particular slot. And visually speaking, I'm trying to draw this particular link over here. You know what? Let me make this a little bit, maybe. I want to draw this particular link over here. Okay. So now, basically, what I wanted to do was SMS dot students at position 1 is assigned to S2. And now you can see that this one over here is really going to be the NOS value. Oh, by the way, I forgot to read the updates from the previous run. So from the previous one, since after we added this S1 into the first slot of the array, part of the updates for the method would be, let me just show you very quickly. I forgot to mention that. Okay, so part of that updates is going to be over here. So let's go to add student record over here, add course record. Oh, sorry, over here. So if you go to the student management system class, you can see part of the update is to do an increment on NOS, which will increment that from 0 to 1. Okay, so that means right now in the second iteration, now in the second course addition, so now because the current index is actually 1, so that's why we are talking about this slot 1. Okay, just make sure. Okay, there's no break on the continuity of my discussion. Okay, so now over here, 1 over here, and then we want to store the address of S2 into 1. So now what we'll do is this also NOS value. And then after which, of course, we want, after adding this course over here, the second course, we want to increment this value further from 1 to 2. The 2 means we have added 2 courses, and then the third course is going to be added at index 2, which is over here, okay, later. Okay, but how do we achieve this? Okay, how do we achieve this light green arrow over here? And the way to do this is very easy. We just go back to student tester over here, and then what we'll do is we'll go for SMS.add students S2, and then everything else stays the same. Okay, so what we expect to see is this particular null slot at position 1 is going to store S1. It's going to store the address of S2, right? Over here. Okay, let's have a look at that. Okay, run the tester, and let's see what we have. Okay, over here you can see that, so now NOS is now 2. So we got 2 students right now. So 2, NOS would be 2. And then the first students, we have seen that already. And what about the second students? The second student is such a student whose number of courses is 2. Is such a student where the number of courses will just be 2. I think there was a typo over here. So of course it should just be 2 because we only got 2 course record over here. So that should just be 2. Okay, it's a typo. Okay, it should just be 2. And also we got 2 course objects over here. So we got 1 here, and we got 1 here. You can see the second course, for example, is 2030 61. You can see 2030 and 61. Okay, you should really try to look at the diagram and look at what's really being output from the computer, and also use the debugger to see if everything else syncs together. Okay, that's about. Okay, let me see what else I want to say. Okay, so hopefully up to now, so we have basically, let's recap what we have achieved in this video. So we defined a new class called StudentMangagementSystem, which can be created at a runtime like this object over here. Okay, SMS over here. Okay, it's the way we implement SMS is almost identical to how we implemented each student class over here. And then you can see the way we added each course record, for example, into a slot in the courses array is very similar to how we added each student objects into a slot of the students array. So the way we do things are very similar because we follow the same pattern. So you really want to see how the pattern is implemented twice in the two classes, the student and student management system. So I would suggest before you move on, you really want to go over the tester. You can see the tester itself is rather neat and concise, but the ideas behind is rather sophisticated. You really want to understand that before you move on.